Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you for those who are online, those who are here. We have a good crowd here this morning. It's great to see all of you. This is the Unitarian Universalist of San Francisco Morning Forum. It's a weekly program, and my name is Bruce Newberger. I am one of the members of the Human Rights Working Group, which organizes the forum. And we are looking forward to this conversation today um, with Claudia de la Cruz. I talked to her a little bit before this morning. I met her for the first time, and it sounds like a really interesting conversation. I'm looking forward to it. Let me just tell you that in terms of our format, our speaker will be up here probably half an hour, 45 minutes doing a presentation, and then it'll be opened up to Q&A. We have cards available. We usually do Q&A through cards for a number of different reasons. But so if you don't have a card and you have a question that occurs to you during the time that Claudia is speaking, just raise your hand and we'll get a card to you. So I'm going to introduce Dolores Heilbrunn, and she's going to introduce our speakers. And she's also going to do the Ohlone prayer. So once again, thank you for being here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dolores Perez Heilbrunn, and I'd like to do the Ohlone recognition. We, members of the First Unitarian Universalist Society of San Francisco, acknowledge that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone people, the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We recognize that we benefit from living and working here, and we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples. The Greater Bay Area is also the ancestral territory of the Miwok, Yokuts, Patwin, and other tribes. As the original stewards of this land, the Indigenous peoples understood the interconnectedness of all of nature and maintained harmony with nature for millennia. We honor them now for their enduring commitment to our Mother Earth. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce, before we hear from Claudia de la Cruz, Mr. Ramsey Robinson. He's a mental health social worker and organizer based in San Francisco, and he has been rooted in the fight for collective liberation. Ramsey?
Good morning, everybody. How's everyone doing? Oh, right on. It's a very nice, peaceful space in here. And any time that the Party for Socialism and Liberation can come into a space, any space really, but a space like this, and talk about the actual possibility of things being different from what they are. The actual possibility, the concrete reality of a different system of capitalism, which is causing so much destruction, so much pain, so much suffering, so much. If you look back, the murder, the theft of land, the enslavement, that's all the root of capitalism. And to talk about an actual alternative to that is very exciting for us to do so. And of course, to be, for the party to be sharing the mic with Claudia, who, and the system that's opposite of that, a system that actually prioritizes people first, that makes sure that folks like us, working class people, oppressed people like us, that we have the economic and political power. And with that power, we do very simple things like make sure that we have the basic necessities that we need, right? Food, clothes, shelter, healthcare, childcare. These things are not guaranteed right now. And the system that does do that is called socialism. And of course, Claudia ran as a presidential nominee as a socialist. And she also got the most votes of any socialist since 1935. So make some noise for that. And not just to get, the people bubbled in her instead of a genocidal war criminal like Biden, or a racist or homophobic, sexist, exploitive billionaire like Trump, and said, no, I'm not going to vote for that. That's amazing. But again, just to get these ideas out, right, is amazing that she was able to do that through her campaign. So big up to that. So I'm just going to have about five or so minutes. So I got to be really kind of burned through this really quickly. But I've been asked to kind of talk about what compare and contrast capitalism and socialism right here in our city. As the introduce her. Is it Judy? What's your name? Dolores, I'm so sorry. As Dolores said, I'm a mental health social worker in the Bayview community of our city. Some people might not even know about the Bayview. It's segregated from the rest of the city, like a lot of Black and Brown communities are. Just like I lived in LA for many years, and just as the 10 freeway, it cuts off South Central, it cuts off Watts, it cuts off Inglewood. The 101 does the same thing to Bayview. And it's a community that's been very much affected by capitalism, almost in a hyper way affected by capitalism. Claudia actually, when she was running for president, got to come up to the high school that I work at as a mental health clinician. And the first thing that first of all, I want to say, 2 weeks before she came up, they found more radioactive objects like a mile from the school that I work at. And she asked the kids when she got into the school, she said, raise your hand if y'all who has asthma here. And about a quarter of the kids in that room raised their hands. And Bayview, kids with asthma, 10 times higher than anywhere else in the city. Women have breast cancer rates 10 times higher than any other women in San Francisco. And the reason that this community is suffering because of that is because of capitalism. Capitalism, as we know, is fused with imperialism is an extension of capitalism. Capitalism is infused with the military system, and that's what brought Black families to Bayview was the Navy. And a lot to say about the Navy in general and the military and the destruction and the death and the murder that they've caused all around the globe as well. But to bring it back home, the ships that went out to test the nuclear bombs that they eventually dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which we know killed thousands, tens of thousands of innocent people, those ships went out from Bayview Hunters Point. And when they blew up those bombs to test them, all that radioactive waste came down to the ship. And then Black people rinsed that off the ship. And that is still in the soil today. 80 years later, it's affecting generations after generations of people. So this is an example of what capitalism does to Bayview and our children in Bayview and in our city. And of course, socialism would turn that completely upside down. I'll say upside right. and if you actually go, I had to rep Claudia's t-shirt here, and the website's on there, Vote Socialist 2024. Yes, the campaign's over, but if you go to that, you'll see her platform. And one of the main things on there was cutting the military budget by 90%. So in a socialist reconstruction, oh my gosh, first of all, the Pentagon and the 1,000 bases that we have all over the world, that's the #1 polluter in the world, the #1 releaser of CO2s. That would stop, and we would use that wealth, those resources, to make sure that we right the wrongs that were done in communities like Bayview and all over the country where there's environmental racism. So that's just one quick example. I have 2 more examples. One is immigration and education. I'm a therapist in Bayview, and I like to check in with the kids that I work with and say, hey, what's going on? How you doing? Give me a rose and a thorn, something good that's going on, a rose and a thorn, something that's more challenging. And I'm telling y'all that after Trump was elected, the first thing that so many of the kids on my caseload came in, because I serve a lot of brown kids as well, is that they're scared. And they were like, really had an extra layer of the anxiety and the depression that they're already dealing with, because they are afraid that their family's going to get ripped apart. And if you can imagine these parents that are working full time, that are paying taxes, but they still don't have workers' comp, right? They still don't have health care. And now, on top of all that stress, they're at risk of getting pulled away from their children. And this is also capitalism. I mean, it reminds me of slavery days, when the first thing that they did, right, is they took, for the profit motive, is they ripped families away, not just to rip families away, but right, for the profit motive. So we see that again today. And I think it goes without saying, under a socialist reconstruction, well, anyone that comes here, no matter if they came in chains, no matter if they came as immigrants, and remember, it's that same imperialism that that goes into other countries, completely disrupts and tears up the economic and social fabric of places like Cuba, of Guatemala, of El Salvador, Honduras, right? Venezuela, and then makes it so bad that people do have to immigrate here, and then they come here, and then they're suffering more exploitation. So this would completely change under a socialist reconstruction. Of course, anyone that's here gets full rights, right? Like all these things that I'm saying: healthcare, food, clothes, shelter. And just to say really briefly, as I get to my last point, that, you know, a socialist reconstruction, a socialist government is not just handouts, right? It really means participation in the democratic process, which of course we all know we don't have right now. Right now, we just have to kind of sit back and wait for another 2 or 4 years to make our decision against the so-called lesser of two evils, right? But socialism is a system where all of us in here, we know what we can contribute to society. We know the skills we have. We know that we're competent enough to elect people from our own neighborhoods, our own communities, to make the decisions that need to get done that really serve us, not profit, right? That serve people. So I just want to note that. As before I close and we welcome Claudia, I just want to talk about a little education. Obviously, I work at a high school and I work with kids who I actually saw the list. There's kids on my caseload. I see about 20, 25 kids. And I work with kids that have like literally 1.3 GPAs and like 4.0 GPAs. Oh, no matter where they fall in that, so many of them are dealing with trauma, with grief, with depression, with anxiety. And a lot of this is not just, and some of it is internal, right? The diagnoses, but a lot of it is not. A lot of it is because the conditions that they're coming from and the fact that their parents are struggling to put food on the table or having to work 2 jobs or dying, being, you know, murdered out there in the streets, brothers and cousins, right? But, you know, I have kids that I'm seeing right now and they're getting into UCLA. They're getting into Howard University. That's where my daddy went. And they're not able to go because they can't afford it. And actually, I was talking to my brother who also went to Howard University. That's a HBC in DC, historically Black college in DC. And he was saying that the federal government under Trump is about to rip out a couple $1 million from Howard again. So they're having to come to me and they're saying, I'm not able to go to where their hard work put them at. I think this is atrocious. And just as I wrap up, you know, it was a struggle for me to get back. I went back I think I was in my late 30s when I went back to school. And it's incredibly difficult to go back to school or even get through school. And I remember thinking, okay, if I'm gonna be a social worker, let me see how my journey is so I can really be able to tell these kids, you know what, if you just get back to school, you can kind of improve your conditions, you can make a little money, you can contribute to society, so forth and so on. And I'm telling you, that's not the case. And I think so much of us, besides the fact that we're tens of thousands of dollars in debt, for some people, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt their whole life, which definitely affects the kind of jobs we take after. I was put in a position where I didn't have anyone helping me. So I was living in unregulated spaces, sometimes no showers, right? Just scraping by. Really had to consider different means, different ways to make money, you know, some of them above the board, some of them below the board. And this is what our system does. This is what capitalism does, where it forces us to have to think in ways that might get us in more trouble, you know, to consider options that might jeopardize even me going back to school and what I got into now. This is atrocious and this can't happen. And so under a socialist reconstruction, as I wrap things up, we know that that's going to be different for education. Anybody that wants to go, yeah, snap that up. Snap that up. Anyone that wants to get an education can go, whether you're from Bayview or not, whether in your 30s like I was, whether you're 15, 16 years old. So just to end with this, I mean, I could talk for another half hour about how the material conditions of a society affect our mental health, right? And by material conditions, I mean, what are the concrete, real things that affect our bodies and our lives, right? The quality of water, drinking water, the quality of jobs, the quality of shelter and homes. These are things that for sure in Bayview, in every box that you measure well-being, is down at the bottom. And until we can fight together and organize together and come together, which we have the power to do, which many people that look just like us all over the world have done, even though the US military tries to push them down, that's the only way that we're going to bring out this socialist society, is by us participating, linking up together and fighting for that. So I'll end with that. And thank you very much and good morning, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ramsey. And I noticed that you organized, founded, and support the Student Socialist Club of the high school where you work to come back. And hopefully you'll be able to come and help us. You teach people how to know your rights, training amidst the growing threat of ICE raids and in undocumented communities. So we really will be calling upon you in the future. So now I'd like to introduce Claudia de la Cruz. She's the executive director of the Interreligious Foundation for Community Organization, Pastors for Peace. She's a mother, educator, community organizer, and theologian. Born in 1980 in the South Bronx to immigrant parents from the Dominican Republic, Claudia has participated in local and international solidarity actions grounded on the principles of liberation theology. She has a master's degree in social work from Columbia University, an MA in divinity from the Union Theological Seminary, and served as co-executive director of the People's Forum in New York City. She's also a pastor of Santo Romero de las Americas Church of the United Church of Christ, doing community organizing from a faith-based perspective. She was a 2024 presidential candidate for the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Peace and Freedom Party of California, and the Workers' Party of South Carolina. Welcome, Claudia.
I'm very happy to be here, actually. So I'm very thankful to the USF for opening their doors to me. It's very interesting when people ask me, how did I become politicized? And I say, I became politicized through the church. Some of them think that somehow politics don't sip into the church. And sometimes we need to check ourselves, because the most political space is a church. And it's been utilized for many, many years precisely to advance politics that don't interest the realities of the people, that don't advance the realities of the people. I was lucky enough to be in a church that was grounded on the principles of liberation theology, a church that understood and said very boldly and very clearly, we came here to worship this Sunday, but service starts tomorrow. We're here today and we gather to get the energy to do everything and anything we need to do to transform society. We don't have the privilege to think of faith as a refuge from the world. Faith is not a refuge from the world. Faith is a task. And that is the space in which I became a socialist. In many ways, the conditions of poverty in which I was born made me question society. But it was that faith-based community that understood so well our task as co-creators with whoever we believe God is, be it God, Allah, the God of many names. That community that understood that in order for us to be effective in the world, we needed to show people that God was in the world. And it was that transformative faith, that transformative energy that we step into as human beings, that understand and know that there is a necessity to transform systems of oppression. And so I'm grateful to be in this space, because it reminds me so much of the space that I came out of. It reminds me of a community that understands that politics is everything we do every day, everything we do or don't do. That apolitical actually is not a thing. Because when you are not political and you don't engage in political work, and if you don't engage in transforming society, you are allowing for others to do that for you against your interest. And so I just wanted to share that small part that is so dear to me, and being in this space reminds me of. I come from a community that is the poorest congressional district in the United States, which is the South Bronx, where 41% of the children who live there live in poverty. We are also the recipients of fresh produce. We have something that is called la marqueta, or the market. All fresh produce that comes into New York City comes to my community first. However, we distribute that across the city and are the last to receive any fresh produce. That is a contradiction of the system in which we live. A lot of the people that live in my community are poor, but not because of their own doing. They are poor because there's an economic system that massifies poverty. And when I was growing up, one of the things that I was told by many different elements in society was that somehow I needed to be ashamed for being poor. And that somehow my poverty was a deficiency of my family. My dad, who worked construction many days, whose hands were cracked, whose knees were hurting most of the time, whose back was hurting most of the time. Or my mom, who was an educator for over 35 years of her life and worked with students who had special needs and woke up at 5:30 in the morning every day and made it home late in the afternoon and bought supplies with her own money because the school that she was teaching in was underfunded. How could I rationalize? How can I validate the narrative that somehow these two amazing human beings that gave so much to society were the reason why I was poor? And so I asked many questions that brought me to socialism. So many times when people ask me, what made you a socialist? Capitalism made me a socialist. The economic system in which we live, that is a terrorist system, that is a brutal system, that is a violent system, made me a terrorist, made me a socialist. Terrorist for those, for those who are in power. I was getting ready to talk about Trump, and that's how that came up. I think it's important for us to understand, how did we get here? It is very important for us to understand, how did we get here with Trump? I think a lot of people in our communities are experiencing anxiety. And I'm talking about kids. I'm not even talking about adults. I'm talking about babies, teenagers, babies in grammar school that are seeing their families stripped apart. I'm talking about kids of federal workers who are now waiting to be laid off. The expectation is that more than 300,000 federal workers will be laid off. People are waiting, they're anticipating losing their jobs, jobs that they thought provided a level of security that would walk them into retirement, that they would be safe. And we're talking about an approximate 300,000 people across the country that are waiting. That produces a level of anxiety, that produces a level of uncertainty that is not only unfair, it's immoral, it's inhumane. We're living in a moment where they're attempting to normalize a certain type of language. There are executive orders that were signed this past week where Trump is establishing that he's unleashing the wrath of more police, more military into our communities, because somehow they want to protect innocent civilians from mobs of criminals. And this is where my confusion came up. When Trump speaks about criminals, when he speaks about terrorists, where he speaks about those who are a threat to others in society, he's talking about people who have stood against genocide. He's talking about people who are organizing in their workplace to be able to have better work conditions. He's talking about people who have taken to the streets to demand the closing or the stopping of the development of cop cities. He's talking about people who believe that there is a possibility to transform society in a way that it reflects the interest of the majority of people in this country. These are the ones that he is calling domestic terrorists. These are the ones that he is calling criminals. And we need to be really clear about this. In this narrative, there is a creation of a category of people that are the innocent ones. And the innocent ones are people that look, sound, and praise others that are him. Those are the safe people. Everybody else can easily go into the crowd of people that he's labeled criminal, terrorist, and on and so forth. Are you following me? We are in a moment where The current administration is overtly patriarchal, overtly white supremacist, overtly criminal. That doesn't mean that that wasn't there before. It just means that now it's overt, that the methodology is changing, that they don't need to use soft power anymore, that actually they don't care about soft power anymore, that the method will be one of bending people's knees, will be one of breaking people's backs if necessary, will be one of breaking people into submission. Again, it's not that it's new, it's overt, and it's more aggressive, and it's more extreme. And it's important for us to understand that Trump is not a product of working class people. He is not a product of white working class people. He is not a product of Black and Latino male voters. He is a product of the capitalist system that produces parasites like him. He is a product of a failed economic and political system that has been unable to meet the needs of the majority of people in this country. We just have to think there's 330 million people in this country. 72 million people voted for Trump. Where are the rest of the people in this country that are eligible to vote? It wasn't the majority of people who voted him in. In fact, we need to think that the Electoral College is actually who decides who the president is. We need to get rid of the Electoral College. If we really want democracy in this country, it should be one person, one vote. That is democracy. In fact, the Electoral College historically has been there to provide a safety net for the capitalists in this society. From the slave owners to the people who own everything in society right now. So we should get rid of the Electoral College. One person, one vote. That's the start of building a true democracy in this country. We need to be clear that it's not working class people's fault. And all of this narrative and all of this talk about we need to blame somebody that is part of our working class family is a failed strategy. And is falling into the hands of those who have the economic and political power that want us divided. This is not a red or blue issue. This is an issue of capitalism. Trump is a result of capitalism, which is the economic system that allows billionaires to rule our society, that allows from an Elon Musk to be at the Oval Office talking to the people of the United States as if he was voted into power. I don't know about any of you, but I would have never casted a vote for someone like Elon Musk in any type of society. And so it's important for us to know that, again, it's not an issue of this administration alone. The root of the problem is capitalism. And so when we talk about Trump, we need to understand that we're talking about a morbid symptom of the system in which we live. And if we really want to defeat the oligarchy, if we really want to defeat the oligarchy, we need to fight the capitalist system and make sure we win. And we must also have a vision for the future. I was taught at a very, very young age that we can't just oppose to things. We can't just come into spaces and say, well, I'm against this and that and this and that. I was taught at a very young age that you have to oppose, but you also have to propose. That the best way of criticizing is by doing. That if you have a concern or a problem with the ways in which something is organized, then you need to out-organize how that looks. And that's strategic, that's not emotional. We could feel many different ways about many different things. We could be very upset about what's happening in our workplace. But if we're not willing to organize our workplace, then it's just going to be a feeling of frustration. It's going to be a feeling of sadness. It's going to be a feeling of isolation, all of that. And feelings are fleeting. One day you could be mad. One day you could be happy. One day you could be sad. One day. So it's a matter of what the material condition is that creates those emotions, and having the ability to organize around those material realities and transforming that. There was a great Latin American theologian, Helder Câmara from Brazil, that said, you know, when I give food to the poor, they call me a Christian. I'm a good person when I give food to the poor. But when I ask, why are there poor people, they call me a communist. You get the rationale behind that. We should go beyond those acts, those feelings, those that are very individual, to ask what produces the miserable conditions in which our people are living, in which our people are forced to live. That is our task. That is our task, not only as people of faith, that is our task as just human beings that are occupying space in this world, especially in a moment such as this. We are living unprecedented times with new challenges, but also with a whole lot of new opportunities that we've never seen before. I don't think I've ever experienced in my many years of organizing, and I could say it 30 because Dolores outed me. Where's Dolores? In my 30 years of organizing, where I have seen so many young people come out in support of, in solidarity of Palestine. I've never seen that. So many young people across the globe, not only in the United States, have been politicized, humanized, radicalized by Gaza. Gaza has put a mirror to the faces of the people across the globe. Will you be complicit, or will you be part of transforming this reality? And humanity has chosen to transform that reality. People have not stopped demanding a ceasefire. People have not stopped demanding an end to the occupation of Palestinian lands. People have not stopped demanding the return of so many that have been displaced. Palestine has become an ordinary word name to discuss over dinner. The world is shifting. People are coming to realize that the world needs to shift. And they're also coming to the realization that the only way to do that is through collective action. That if we don't have the capacity to do what we're called for, which is to be able to be in solidarity across historical lines of division, then we will not get what we need as a people. It's interesting. Right now, Trump is telling Bukele from El Salvador, we need to create more prisons for domestic terrorists. I hope you heard that. Did you hear him saying that when they were meeting? The United States imposed its military, economic, and political power over the people of the global South, created oligarchies all across the globe that became junior partners to the United States. Bukele is the expression of that. He is not there in support of the people of El Salvador. He is there to advance the interests of the oligarchs in El Salvador and the interests of US imperialism. And when he comes and meets with Trump, and Trump says we need 5 more prisons for domestic terrorists, and they are all laughing, we need to pay attention. Because the global South has been a big sweatshop for the US for many decades. They want to go and they want to extract resources, they extract resources. They want to go and put resorts all across the beaches that do not belong to them, and they do so, and they exploit the labor, they do that. And now, not only do they want sweatshops, they want mass incarceration. It is unsustainable for humanity and the planet to continue with this model. It is a model of death. It is a model of violence. It is a model that does not allow people to live dignified lives. And it is the model that produces migration. It is the model that has 120 million people plus moving all around the world due to war, due to climate catastrophe, and economic sanctions. And it is estimated that by 2050, 2.1 billion people will be moving all across the globe, seeking a better life. This is not normal. And we have a president and an administration that wants to force us, to bend us, to break us into submission and into the belief that that is the normality. But guess what? We are in a new world. We are in such a new world. How many of you went to May Day? Nice. Next time people are out on the streets, get out on the streets. Because what we are experiencing is that organizations are building relationships that they thought they would never build. This moment that is so unprecedented is birthing unusual relationships. People who have come to the understanding that this is not a moment to organize in silos, that this is not a moment to be sectarian, that this is not a moment to fall into small quarrels about who's organizing what and who's speaking first or last. That this is a moment for principled and strategic unity. That this is a moment to fight, to defend what the people have historically achieved in this country. The advancements of our civil and human rights that are being chipped away for profit. Yes, the Department of Education is not perfect. Public education is not perfect, but it's something the people fought for. And if they destroy the Department of Education, and if they continue to destroy education that is public and sell us education, there will be many people who will have access to education. Many more, because there's so many who don't have access already. And so we should not be bystanders while they are attacking everything we have achieved as a people. Everything generations had bled for and have sacrificed their lives for. Democrats and Republicans did not grant us these rights. Our people fought for them. People fought for civil rights. People fought for voting rights. People fought for LGBTQAI rights. People fought for women's rights. And whatever we got, we fought for. And any right that the people have advanced, any right that the people have advanced that is lost in this period will not return tomorrow. It will be lost forever. Because the reason Trump is doing everything he is doing is to reestablish a new form of governance. A governance that saves capitalism from its crises. Are you following me? And a system that both Democrats and Republicans will benefit from. Because when they tell us that the Project 2025 somehow came to be in 2024, we just need to go back to the Reagan era. And we find out that this has been under development for decades. And that in fact, there have been conditions created for Trump to do exactly what he's doing today. If you think about immigration alone, it was Obama that created the cages at the border that Trump then utilized. Obama left office as the deporter in chief, having deported more people than anyone else in government. Obama that came in with a dream, the narrative that, you know, we can, si se puede. He deported the majority of immigrants in history. And he also went on to the very usual Democratic Party ways of warmongering, bombing 6 countries. We need to remember, capitalism does a really good job at imposing amnesia, at dismembering us as a people in our spirit, but also dismembering us from our memory, from our ability to remember. Even if we feel it in our bones, we dismember ourselves from that feeling because it's too uncomfortable. Well, this is the time to be uncomfortable. This is the time for courageous conversations. We are living in a historic moment of oppression. We must respond with a historic moment of resistance. This is not a time for niceness. This is not a time for cowards. This is not a time to be bystanders. This is a moment that will transform everything we know. Everything we know. But there's good news, because there's always good news. And the good news is that we are the majority. That what we are witnessing is an echo chamber of a small group of people. I mean, the commemoration of 100 days in the White House was, I don't even know what to call it. I mean, I could say, you know, ludicrous. I could say many words. We could spend here the whole day looking for words. But to see the press room, how they basically isolated the press room, all mainstream progressive media, which we know is not that progressive, still serves oligarchs, were put outside. And the only ones left in that room were the right-wing media outlets. And everything and anything that they said was about how beautiful and intelligent the press secretary was. And how refreshing it is to walk into the White House and see babies running around. And of course, none of them are talking about the babies that are being bombed in Gaza. None of them are talking about the kids that are lacking food, housing, and security in our communities. But how beautiful it is to see the White House filled with babies. Because guess what? Those are the babies who matter. That is an echo chamber. The majority of people are the ones that are outside protesting again for working conditions, protesting to stop police brutality and the development of mass incarceration, protesting everything and anything that threatens life. They are the minority. The only difference is that that minority is organized. That minority has political and economic power. And so our fight is not a fight of feeling good. I mean, feeling good is good. I love to feel good. I got to drink my coffee in the morning, feel good, look at the sun, get some, I need that. But what we really need is political and economic power to define not only our present, but our future. This is not a feel-good fight. This is a real fight. That's why I say that this is not a moment. It is not a moment for cowards. This is a moment to build the conditions for a revolution in this country. This is a moment where we decide whether we want to stick to the old world, a world that tells us consistently that we have a democracy in this country. And our democracy consists of people going into the ballot box and crossing out or filling out a little bubble with the name of a presidential candidate or a congressman or a congresswoman to represent us. And then find out that they don't really represent us, that they really represent the interest of the wealthy. Like we could do that. We've been doing that. And there was an amazing scientist called Albert Einstein that said, insanity in definition is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. We could be insane people. We could do that. We could continue to validate, because that is what voting is. Voting is validating. It's not a question of power, because again, the Electoral College serves the question of power. The people validate. Are you following me? That's the type of democracy we're told we have, a democracy that tells us that we have that right to validate them, but we do not have the constitutional right to housing. We do not have the constitutional right to food. We don't have the constitutional right to a free healthcare system. We don't have the constitutional right to be able to access free education. Basic human rights, because the Constitution of this United States has always protected property over people, because it was created by capitalists, by slave owners. And we still have the same constitution. That is a democracy of the past. That is the democracy of the ruling class. The people in this country are coming to consciousness that we need a new system, that we need a new society. And so when they talk about our people, my people in the South Bronx and the poorest communities all across this country being politically apathetic, I would like to differ. My people are not politically apathetic. They are just not aligned with bourgeois politics. My people understand that they're being played, that neither of these two parties are going to resolve their most immediate needs. And therefore, they would rather try to figure it out on their own in their communities, doing what they need to survive, rather than go into those ballot boxes and vote against their consciousness and their values and what they need. They are not, my people aren't stupid. My people are people of backbone. They have been forced into poverty. That is not a choice they have made, because it is not an individual choice. It is what capitalism produces. So no, actually, the type of democracy that we should be aiming to create at this time is a popular democracy, is a people's democracy. And this is the moment to talk about it. And this is the moment to be in conversations with communities, to make sense of the world in which we are and the one that we are going to birth. We need to be able to organize our people, to organize the discontent, to organize the levels of anger, of anxiety towards a vision of the future. What is that vision of the future? Why is it that Jeff Bezos, one of the wealthiest men in the world, gets to have $7.9 million an hour? $7.9 million that he steals every hour from millions of working class people who are losing life and limb in these Amazon warehouses. People who have not been able to be given the respect as human beings to come to a negotiation table to be able to get $22 an hour, which is not enough in this economy. Heads of household. But this one man gets to have $7.9 million an hour. I want a world where there is economic democracy. I want a world where workers have control of the money, of the capital that they produce. I want a world where workers get to say, I don't want to have our wealth be placed anywhere where babies are going to be bombed, where families are going to be displaced, where the earth is going to be damaged. I don't want a world that continues to impose brutality, continues to kill humanity without any type of consequences. I want a world where my 10-year-old could live and thrive. My 10-year-old said, he's an artist. He loves art. He says, I want to study theater. Can I study theater, Mom? And I said, yeah, if you want to study theater, that's fine, you know? And then he says, but can you please win the revolution so that we don't have to pay for education? I want a world where 10-year-olds could dream without having to be concerned about how they're going to pay for what makes them happy. I want a world where people could age with dignity, where they could have housing, where they can have food, and it doesn't become a burden for them or anyone around them. That's economic democracy. That is the power that we should be wielding as workers. There is no reason why the Elon Musks of the Jeff Bezos of the world, or the Trumps of the world, or the Bidens of the world get to decide that we cannot live with dignity. I want a world where we can have conversations with other nation states and learn from them and contribute to a better world. That we don't have to have 800 military bases all around the world. That as a parent or a grandfather or a daughter or a son, I am not worried about my kid, my father, my mother being overseas doing the bidding of US imperialism. I want a world where jobs are guaranteed, where people don't have to utilize unions to negotiate their exploitation, but that they could go into a space to speak about how do we build democracy in this workplace? How do we organize this workplace to be a contribution to society? And that world is not utopian. That world is realizable. That world is necessary. And this is when we decide that we want to fight for that world. Because if we don't fight for that world now, we will digress generations. We will be back in the 1930s. Because that is where this administration wants to bring us. But they will only get us there if we allow it. Collective action is necessary. And we need to utilize all the elements that we possibly can, all the creativity, all the intelligence that our people have to fight back. But not only to fight back, to win. To win. I'll end with this. The capitalist system in many ways has harmed our capacity to envision a world without capitalism, a world without the structures that exist, a world without the systems that exist. What this moment is teaching us and showing us is that all those systems, all those structures can be done away with. Trump is getting rid of a lot of them. But he's getting rid of them to save capitalism. What would happen if the working class in this country, that is the majority of people in this country, understand that we too have the power to transform these systems to our benefit, for our interest? We need to really work in building the confidence of the working class that has been told that we don't have the power. And that means that if we need to strike, we strike. If we need to have mass mobilizations that are sustained, we do it. If we have to build campaigns, we do it. Whatever is necessary to be able to become unignorable, unavoidable. The only ones that have enough force to transform history are the people. And the people should be conscious of that power. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we have some questions from the audience. And I'll try to be as brief as possible. Do you think that the Supreme Court will continue to decide these legal cases for the people or for the administration?
Okay. Do we not maybe two at a time?
Sure.
So that we can hear.
What do you think of Bernie Sanders to stop the oligarchy tour?
Okay. All right. So I'll start with those two.
All right.
So one thing that we need to be really clear, like I said, there are conditions that have been created previously to be able to allow Trump to do everything that he's doing. Now, the Supreme Court is an expression of that as well. There are people there who are going to back the administration. Nothing has ever happened in this country. Nothing has been happened. People haven't gained anything without forcing the hand of those who have economic and political power. Like the masses of people, from the civil rights movement, I mean, to the times of slavery, like everything that has happened because masses of people have sacrificed. And so the Supreme Court may have the desire to continue to validate a lot of what Trump is doing. Yeah, that is possible. But it's also possible that in this country, there is such a revolt, such a revolution, such a show massively of disgust by what's happening that they are forced not to. Because it will be something that is not beneficial for the ruling classes to happen. So we need to make it known that we are not going to take it. So there are the legal structures that could choose one way or the other. But again, we've never just sat there and waited for them to decide. People have made them decide for the recognition of our humanity. And I think that's what needs to happen. The other question was around my thoughts on Bernie and AOC's oligarchy tour. I think they're in the mainstream. A lot of people didn't know the word oligarch before they kind of brought it up. Like in the mainstream, people don't speak in that way. People don't, when Bernie was campaigning in 2016 and he utilized the word universal healthcare on TV, a lot of people went on to try to figure out what is the system that could potentially give me universal healthcare. And a lot of young people got interested in socialism. So it's a voice that allows for people to come into contact with some terms that are terms of the left, that are terms of the socialist movements. Now, I know that there's a limitation within the Democratic Party to allow people like Bernie get any further than where he is, because he also plays a role. And the role is to pacify people back into the Democratic Party. And in my opinion, we cannot not be where the people are. So if there are masses of people in these oligarchy tours, despite the oligarchy tours, you know, we're with the people. But we're with the people with another message that we're not only here to fight the oligarchy, we're here to defeat the oligarchy. And that means that we do not need a Democratic Party. We do not need a Republican Party. We need a People's Party. We don't isolate ourselves from where the people are. We create a distinction between us and those who have economic and political power and abuse it against our people.
This next question is, how do we build our movement, create new coalitions, or go beyond sectarianism without compromising our values? In other words, how do we build power together when we disagree on some issues? The different forces on the left, the different organizations on the left. How do we work together to achieve that? And the social media has put forth many people before the social media, the regular media is putting forth people who are agreeable, on the same page, smiling all the time, and aren't like yelling and screaming as the dissidents do. How can we solve that problem by presenting different types of people that are appealing to the masses?
So I started answering the questions without saying, I don't have the recipe to everything. And so I'm sharing based on experience and also based on political lines and the political culture and understanding and approach to the world of the party that I'm a member of, which is the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I think in many ways, when we think about how do we build, coalition power, it's very important for us to understand that unity does not mean uniformity. Not everyone has to agree on everything. Every possibility of progress and revolution has come with the building of popular fronts, the building of broad coalition. And what that means is that as a people of integrity, we need to know what are the things that are negotiable and what are the things that are non-negotiable. Our politics should not be negotiable. Our integrity should not be negotiable. Our values should not be negotiable. But there are things that we can negotiate. For example, if we're putting together an event such as May Day anywhere, and people have different understandings of what voice could bring, I don't know, a message that is necessary. We don't have to spend 3 hours debating that. For as long as there's many representations of different voices and messages. Are you following me? Like, there are things that are low stakes and things that are high stakes. Things that could break or make organizations, coalitions. What keeps us together is the political objective. That is the unifying thing. What is our political objective for the creation of this coalition? What are our political goals? What do we want to accomplish? That large vision is what keeps us together. If anyone threatens that vision, then that's when there is a problem. And that doesn't necessitate us selling out our politics. It doesn't necessitate us selling out our integrity. But it is possible if we're willing to do it. I think those were the two. And the question of like the mainstream, I think the mainstream media, we can't, unfortunately, we have to rely somewhat on the mainstream media. But the perception that they put out there of people who are protesting is that people who protest are violent. People who are protesting are shouting and screaming and doing all these things, which we do. We shout, we scream because we can and we should and we have to. But mass mobilization in itself is not the strategy. That's a tactic. Only when you belong to a political organization, whatever that looks like, do you develop people that have the capacity to be relatable to the masses, that are capable of speaking to people and moving people outside of agitation. Protests are agitational, and they want to focus on that aspect of it. I went to an event that was a very broad event in Denver, in Colorado, Boulder, Colorado. And there were people from many different political lines and from many, all over the political spectrum. And at the end of it, there was a woman who came up to me and said, "You are a fiery version of AOC." You know what I did? I hugged her. Because the only thing this woman has access to as something that's progressive is AOC. That's her notion of it. I wasn't going to argue. Or the mainstream shows us what the elite wants us to see. Those who fight, who struggle, who protest are the crazy ones. But the most moderate and progressive ones look like Bernie and AOC. And what we need to do is show up and be able to show up in a way that transforms that notion. There are more people to the left, like way to the left of that, that are envisioning a life outside of the structures of capitalism, and people will receive it. But that is formed through political organization. That is not formed individually.
Thank you. We have another question. What does the justice system look like under socialism? What are the parameters, and would it be similar to ours, like a Supreme Court and federal judges down the line? And then the second question is, what action can we perform every day that contributes to the collective liberation?
Those are two good questions. There's a book back there. Noah, raise your hand. I didn't ask him to stand because he is close to God. He is one of the tallest men I've met. But there's a book called The Socialist Reconstruction that is back there, which is our vision of what a society could look like under socialism. Many times, again, we say what we oppose, never talk about what we're proposing. We have a clear understanding of what we want. We want a socialist society that creates systems and structures based on the needs of the people, not the needs of the oligarchs. So what does it look like? It looks like participation at all levels by the people. Participation in their local communities, participation in the statewide, participation regionally, participation nationally, which means that the brother right here, yes, you, what do you do for a living?
Senior network administrator.
He's a senior network administrator. What's your name?
David.
If David says, I want to run for councilman, you run for councilman, but you don't compete on the basis who's backing you up, whether it is, the bankers or the realtors, or no, you compete on the basis of your politics, your values, the ways in which you've engaged with community. That's a different way of doing politics. And we want everybody and anybody that has the desire to contribute to building a society that is a good society to participate. That is not the system in which we live today. And so from that small local community all the way to the national representation and participation of people in building society, we talk about having national assemblies of people who have been historically marginalized, the indigenous community, for example, on whose land we stand, that were colonized, that were killed by capitalist systems. Again, we're talking about the reorganization of society. So if we don't need a Supreme Court, why the hell have it? If we don't need Congress, why have it? We could create other forms of structuring society in a way that benefit us. The other question was in relationship to, remind me again?
What can we do every day?
What can we do every day? We could do many things individually. Politics is what we do every day. We could choose to buy from a place and not from the next. We could choose to invest in this community effort or not. We could choose to participate in masses, in marches. We could choose to show up to meetings. We could choose many things. For me, what I've understood is that this task of transforming society is not something you do one day and then you don't do the next. The task of transforming society must become your political life. It must be part of what you do every day. And it also means that you don't do it alone. You need to be part of an organization. You need to contribute to that organization, meaning that if the people say we need to do phone banking, we will do phone banking because that is what we need to do today. That if we need to make placards, then that's what we're doing because that is what is necessary today. That I've never spoken to public and now I'm given 5 minutes to speak, then I will do that today. We will be stretched in doing that beyond what we feel like we can do. We will be told what is necessary to advance movement.
Here's another question about the current administration. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is supposed to meet 6 months before they to decide what type of flu vaccine is going to be proposed by the World Health Organization. They haven't done it yet. The MAGA appointed RFK Jr. is anti-vaccine. Do you think that Kamala Harris would have put us in this situation?
I think, again, going back to the question of power, we live in a country that during COVID hoarded vaccines and allowed for many people to die. The health system in this country is one that's highly privatized. The first question you are asked when you go into a clinic or a hospital is what coverage do you have, not what symptoms do you have. And that has been under Republicans and Democrats. Do I think that Kamala Harris probably would have been as bold as RFK? Maybe not. Maybe not. But would she have cared to make universal healthcare a reality? No. And that's the problem. That's the real problem. The real problem is that in this country, you need to go through many hoops because of health insurance companies that are making a killing out of people dying, people being unhealthy. You have to go through many hoops to get the slightest amount of healthcare. If Kamala Harris would have decided and said, and actually, given glimpse, which the Democratic Party is never going to do that, something along the lines of, we don't need healthcare insurance anymore. We're going to get rid of insurance companies. Then I maybe would have thought that she would, probably, but she's not going to say that because the people who are financing her are big pharma, are big corporations. That's the problem. We cannot afford to deal with symptoms anymore. The scale of the problem is too large. So for them to say, we're going to give you this little inch, we need to say we want the whole pie. Actually, we're not going to allow this to happen. So that's the problem. It's a matter of power. It's a matter of who gets to decide over our lives, over our health care, our education, our housing. And it's not us. We need to have that power.
We're running out of time, but I have two important questions at the end. Is it possible to have a system which takes some of the good things from capitalism and some of the good things from socialism to make a new basic pattern for how to best organize the government? And then the last thing is, would you say a little bit more about your work at Pastors for Peace and the People's Forum of New York? And that'll have to be the last question.
Thank you, Dolores. The good things from capitalism. Anything that is good about capitalism, working class people have created, and ruling class people have held it hostage. Period. From the advancement of technology to the development of infrastructure to everything and anything that we could potentially identify as something that has been good in the centuries of capitalism is because working class people have utilized their intellect and creativity to produce that. And we are saying that we want working class people to continue to produce for the benefit of the people and not for the benefit of the wealthy. So if that's the consideration of what's good around capitalism, I take it. Because I don't see any other form in which capitalism has been good, except for what the working class people have produced. And I think that is necessary in order for us to build a new society. We need people who are software engineers. We need people who are doctors. We need people who are scientists, who are researchers, construction workers, restaurant workers, domestic workers. We need what they create and produce to be able to build a new society. But that new society then will be built in the expression and based on the need of that working class people. That is my answer to that. To the question of what do I do in the People's Forum and what have I done in terms of Pastors for Peace, IFCO, the Interreligious Foundation for Community Organization, is an organization that has been around for 57 years. And it has focused its work around movements for Black liberation, movements for civil and human rights. It has engaged historically with solidarity with Cuba. Cuba has been under blockade from the United States of America for over 60 years. The United States government administrations steal $15 million a day from the Cuban economy. In the course of the last 60 plus years, it has been $160 plus billion that it has stolen from the Cuban economy, strangling the economy. It's attempting really boldly and loudly to create a crisis in Cuba so that people fight their revolution, but Cuba continues to stand. Cuba continues to say that they will not bend the knee to US imperialism and continues to be a beacon of hope, producing doctors for the world, not bombs. Pastors for Peace, in its attempt to provide material solidarity with our siblings in Cuba, has engaged for decades in the development of peace caravans, going all across the country and talking to people about US imperialism and the impacts of US imperialism on communities and people in Cuba, in other places like Venezuela, in places like Haiti, and gathers humanitarian aid, medicine, educational supplies, medical technology to take to Cuba. In a period, it was extremely revolutionary to do. People here in this space, like Richard Becker, have been in that and are part of that history. Folks that actually confronted the State Department many times to be able to get that humanitarian aid to the people of Cuba. And that is what IFCO Pastors for Peace does. I was impacted and was brought into the family of IFCO Pastors for Peace in 1997, and I've stayed in solidarity and doing that work with Pastors for Peace as a volunteer for many years. And now I have the esteemed honor and privilege to be the director of that organization. And I co-founded and was the co-executive director of the People's Forum. The People's Forum is a incubator, is a space that nourishes the new generation of revolutionaries, of fighters here in the United States. We have an internationalist socialist vision. So we do a lot of work in solidarity with our working class siblings from all over the world, and we focus on political education. You should look it up. We have many different courses. We have summer schools. Right now, there is a course that we are collaborating with the Palestinian Youth Movement that is the origins of Zionism. These are political education courses that equip young people that are out there organizing, mobilizing, and doing the work in the streets to do it with an ideology, to do it grounded on our history, grounded in our theory of working class people. And so I'm very proud to have been part of the couple of folks that got together and understood that it was necessary for our young people to be equipped with political education and have a vision of the world that we're fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Thank you for Ramsey as well. Thank you for the Party of Socialism and Liberation for organizing or bringing these speakers to us. That was an amazing presentation, and I hope we can have these folks back again sometime in the not too distant future. I just want to make a couple of announcements. Next week, we're going to have what's called the Memoir of the Reluctant Giant with David Strachan and Davi Barker. A memoir of the reluctant giant follows David Strachan's journey through the complexities of gender and identity, emphasizing the themes of love, loss, and authenticity. Okay, that's next week here at the same time. I also want to point out that we have a vigil that we've been doing for years here at the UU, right in front of the church on Wednesday mornings from 8 to 9. And this Wednesday, I would like to invite anyone who possibly can make it to join us at that time. We are going to be part of a sort of a worldwide support network of demonstrations and actions for those Palestinians and Israelis in Jerusalem that are carrying out days of mass protest against the genocide in Gaza and against occupation and apartheid in Israel in the West Bank. And so I would like to invite you to be part of that. We're going to be having, we're going to have photographs of children, the children who've been murdered in Gaza. It's illegal in Israel to even show those pictures. And yet people have defied the authorities, have gone out and by the thousands held up pictures of children. Anyway, we want to be part of supporting that rising spirit of opposition to Zionism and fascism in Israel. And so that's pretty much what we have today. Again, thank you very much, Claudia and Ramsey. Claudia, your speech was amazing, amazing. And I learned a lot from it, and I'm inspired by it. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you.